And I was working for an importer, Neil Rosenthal, at the time, and they were one of my biggest customers. And that's how I met Joe, and Joe's still a very close friend. Don't get to see him nearly as much as I'd like, but I developed quite a few friendships out of Trotter's, which had a lot to do with Chicago, just the way Chicago people are. It's an easy place to make friends. And Neil still imports a producer in Gigondas, Domaine Gourde Cholet. And Joe bought the rosé. And rosé Gigondas at that time was pretty rare. There aren't that many anyway. And Joe bought it because he loved it and because it was really good. And if you know the flavors of Gigondas, it's Southern Rhone. It was 100% Grenache. And there's what we call garrigue, which is the wild herbs. And you know it if you've been there. You roll your windows down, the sun's beating down on the fields, and it's all wild. It's lavender, it's a lot of wild fennel. It's the wild herbs of the area. And they brought it a plate. You never knew, or I never knew, it was a tasting menu, and it was just, it's like, do you have any restrictions? I said, no, just, come here. Just, I'm here to learn. And that was the thing. And Joe brought out an oyster. And I always say also the wine. I wouldn't order the wine. I just say, what do you guys do in glasses? And just, that was along for a ride. I was there to learn. So it wasn't about me. He brought out a single oyster, and it had a fennel jelly. And he brought a glass of this Gigondas Rosé. And it's a very minerally wine, but because it's ripe, it's probably about 15% alcohol, but there is this mineral undercurrent to it. Plus, there's always the smell of the garrigue that you get there, but this isn't a pink wine, so relatively speaking lighter. And it was one of these things where you couldn't tell where the oyster and the fennel stopped and where the wine began. And it was the simplest thing in the world. And for me, a lot of choices were exactly that. And you looked at that, and it was this. Maybe he'd agree, or maybe he'd say it's kind of. He'd say it was effective. It was very zen, and I don't know probably enough about zen to even use the word zen, but it was so simple, and the minimalism of it, and the maturity, in my opinion, that it takes for anybody to know when to stop. And that's something that you just don't see in a lot of chefs. And I understand you're ambitious, you want to show off, and you don't know where to stop. And that it was so mature to me because it was effectively two flavors on the plate. But what they did to the wine, I'll never forget it. Amazing. And that was where I really realized that he was, and the people he worked with. It was a collaboration. He leaned very heavily on his staff, obviously huge staff. And it was when Guillermo was the chef de cuisine at the time. And I just said, okay, that's mature. That was, to me, that was just like Hassard's egg. Just so simple, knowing exactly when to stop and letting it go. It was perfection. So simple but perfect.